Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us and welcome to our viewers watching on CBC television. On the show today, another atmospheric river is hitting BC's south coast. We'll let you know what to expect this week. And BC school districts will start limiting cell phone use in classrooms. How would that work? What should be restricted and what should be allowed? We're taking your calls on the open line. Plus at 12:40, with the rising cost of, well, everything, how are you staying active without breaking the bank? I'm Michelle Eliot. Welcome to BC Today. Thanks for joining us on CBC Radio 1. And yes, starting today, you can also watch us on your local CBC television channel. Very good to have you there. Of course, we're also live streaming on the CBC News app, cbc.ca/BC, and on the CBC Vancouver YouTube page. 12:07 now, and our top story today. It was a wet weekend on the south coast. There's a flood watch for the Sea to Sky, the Sunshine Coast, the North Shore Mountains, and parts of Vancouver Island. And a flood watch is in place for the Fraser Valley. This is for areas around the Sumas River. Now, that's been downgraded from a flood warning by the BC River Forecast Centre over the weekend. CBC's Michelle Gomez joins us now from the Sumas Prairie. Hi, Michelle.
Hello, Michelle.
Can you tell me where exactly you are and what it looks like around you? I certainly see quite a bit of water behind you there.
Yes, we're in the Sumas Prairie in Abbotsford, and on the drive-in we saw a lot of flooded fields and wet plants. I'm at a blueberry farm right here. You can see that there's water pooling all across the field and in between the crops. Now, yesterday, these fields were completely submerged after heavy rain. The farmers shared some videos with CBC, and it looked like a lake. You can tell some of the plants behind me are still quite wet.
Yeah, absolutely. And did you hear at all what that compares to what it usually looks like, Michelle?
Yes, it's much wetter than it normally looks like. It's a very stressful and anxious time for a lot of these farmers. We spoke to about 3 blueberry farmers, and they say this is the worst flooding they've seen since the 2021 November floods, which were very catastrophic and devastated their crops and really impacted their livelihoods. So it's a stressful time for a lot of the farmers out here.
Absolutely, and still recovering from that. So what are the biggest concerns right now then?
The biggest concern for the flooded crops is fungal infections, different root infections and root rot. And the longer time that the plants are spent submerged, the higher the risk. So a lot of concern about that right now. And
of course, looking at what that means for farmers just months down the road. Something to watch for sure. Michelle, thank you very much.
Thank you, Michelle.
That's the CBC's Michelle Gomez, live from Abbotsford. 12:09 now, 1:09 in the Mountain Time Zone. And for more on what we can expect this week, CBC's climate and science specialist Darius Madavi joins me now here in studio. Hello, Darius.
Hello.
I was going to ask, where are the hot spots? But where are the wet spots is probably more apropos. Where are we looking at here for the most rain this week?
Definitely parts of inland Vancouver Island, as well as parts of the Sea to Sky and even the North Shore Mountains. So right now, across the south coast, the place where we've seen the most rain is this weather station near Tofino. A little bit further inland, higher elevation, they've recorded over 400 millimeters of rain just since Friday. Meanwhile, one of the stations on the North Shore Mountains has recorded just over 200 millimeters of rain. And then along the Sea to Sky, the weather station near Squamish has recorded close to 150 millimeters. So there's been some extremely heavy rainfall over the weekend, and then we do have quite a bit more to come. But I'd say central Vancouver Island, along the Sea to Sky and in Howe Sound, and then the North Shore Mountains, that's where we're seeing the most accumulation this time around.
And so you're looking ahead now. Of course, we had a lot of rain yesterday, Friday as well. And what about later on this week?
Well, we've got another sort of branch of this atmospheric river that's going to be hitting probably late Tuesday into early morning Wednesday and then continuing throughout the day Wednesday. So again, this one looks like it's mostly going to affect central Vancouver Island, but it could be affecting a little bit further south as well. So this one is a little bit different. Last time we had this chain of moisture just directly feeding into the south coast. This time we sort of get an offshoot of it, much like we did last week on Friday. So might be a little bit less impactful than this one that we've already had, but because of the amount of accumulation we've seen already, could definitely be setting the setting the scene for some more flood watches and even warnings being issued.
Some concerns there, and we saw the I guess temporary for yesterday flood warning for the Sumas Prairie area, and that was of course downgraded to a flood watch. But in case of those flood warnings, what are some things people should be thinking about?
Oh, I would say definitely try and keep off the roads if it is raining heavily, because there is an increased risk of landslides or mudslides. Make sure that any drainage around your house is clear. That's probably the most important thing you can do. Make sure there's nothing clogging any sort of drain anywhere around, because that's the best way you can protect your house, or your place of residence. But I think the main thing is going to be just trying to keep off any roads that might be experiencing any sort of impact from those rains.
That's very true. You know, my experience driving through flooded roads, you just don't know how deep that's going to be, right?
Yes.
So try and avoid being out there. You heard Michelle refer to the farmers that she's been talking about, saying they haven't seen this much wet weather, this much rain since 2021, and those catastrophic rains and flooding as well. How does this compare?
Fortunately, this isn't a repeat. That's the biggest good news that I can give. I was saying at the end of last week that because this atmospheric river is hitting further north than the last one did, and we're seeing a lot of that rain drop on the alpine areas, we do get a little bit better news in terms of many of the places where we see the worst impacts, because that rain just isn't hitting in the same places. So even though the amount of moisture in these river events might be comparable, because again, all this moisture and all this warmth is coming up to us straight from the tropics, straight from Hawaii. So that's a lot of moisture in the air. Just where it's dropping is really the deciding factor, and we did get a little bit luckier this time around.
Okay, and what does that mean for the drought and the water levels that we have been worried about for the coming months?
Yes, so sort of a double-edged sword here. We do get a little bit of good news in that this will be a temporary reprieve from those drought conditions. So right now, if we were to look at the drought levels, they would have improved quite a bit on the south coast. Reservoirs have probably been topped up quite a bit, but not great news as we head into the summer, because our snowpack has just been devastated. We've seen these extremely warm temperatures. Freezing levels are beyond the peak of even Whistler and Blackcomb right now. So we're seeing some pretty high snow melt, and then that rain that hit many of these areas just absolutely destroyed that snowpack. And so even though it might be a bit of relief for the drought conditions right now, as we get into the summer and we see that first critical month where almost entirely the drought conditions are determined by how much snowpack we have and how much snow melt we have, it's looking less than ideal as we head into that time.
Oh dear. Now you mentioned the freezing levels are very high. In terms of the temperatures, 12 degrees in Prince George today. Yes. I mean, that is not what we expect late January.
No. Right now, I pulled up a few really outlandish ones. Prince George, usually this time of year, would be around -3. So we're talking 15 degrees above usual. Fort St. John is sitting around 20 degrees higher than usual in their low tonight. And Fort Nelson around 25 degrees higher than usual as their high today.
25 degrees.
25 degrees above what's typical. So we're definitely seeing some strange impacts. I know it's sort of quite a flipped switch from what we were seeing just a couple weeks ago.
That's right.
So we had this cold snap from that Arctic air coming down, and then we got the snow from that Arctic outflow air mixing with some Pacific moisture, and now our third week in a row of these sort of very weather extremes.
Yes.
We're getting this really warm, moist air coming up to us from the tropics, and so that's really causing temperatures to jump quite a lot across all of BC. Now, for places further north, there are other sort of weather events that are being mixed in there as well to bring those temperatures quite so high. But across the board, we're looking extremely warm, much more so than usual. I don't think, other than at high elevations, there's a single place in BC that is below zero right now.
Yeah.
And actually this morning, Vancouver YVR was recording the highest temperature in Canada for at least an hour.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Really something.
Yeah, I mean, it is so strange to go onto the Environment Canada website and not see minus anywhere, really. Darius, we'll keep an eye on it, of course, in terms of the flood watch for later this week. Thanks so much for giving us the explanation behind all of this. Good to have you.
Thank you.
Darius Madavi is CBC's climate and science specialist. It's 12:15, 1:15 in the Mountain Time Zone. This is BC Today. Well, the rainy weather system has also brought damage to some local farms, as you heard. Harry Sidhu is a blueberry farmer in Abbotsford whose fields were flooded this weekend. He told the CBC how his fields held up and how farmers are still feeling the effects of 2021.
We've gotten a lot of rainfall and the water's been pooling and the fields have been flooding where we were heavily impacted back in November in 2021 and are in a recovery period to see this amount of water coming and starting to pool and flood the fields has been bringing back a lot of bad memories, and where we've moved forward with recovery efforts and have a lot of concerns. I haven't been able to get around to a lot of farms, but the farms that I've been able to see, some of them are worse than others. Some of the fields that they moved forward with recovery efforts and replanted their fields with new plantings, the fields are completely submerged underwater where you're only able to see, 4 to 6 inches of the canes.
What does this mean for a blueberry farm when they're submerged underwater? Does that mean the crops are gone?
It's a negative impact to them because if the roots are underwater, it's causing a negative impact to the roots. There could be root rots that initiate, such as Phytophthora root rot, which is overall detrimental to the plant health. A lot of stress, a lot of bad memories from before. We haven't gotten closure from before, so it's just not a good situation.
Well, heralded by the province as one of the ways it's combating online threats are the coming restrictions on cell phone use in schools. And that's causing debate after Friday's announcement from the provincial government saying that they would work with school districts to come up with policies restricting cell phone use in classrooms. We're asking you, what do you think that should look like? And what should be restricted? What should be allowed when it comes to cell phones in class? You can give us a call on the open line, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, on your cell phone, pound 690. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Now, we reached out to the BC Teachers Federation, and they said in a statement to us that cell phones are both a distraction and a learning resource, but did point out that access to technology and lack of resources are bigger issues. The Federation also said they haven't received direction from their membership on whether cell phones should be banned across the province yet, and that the provincial government needs to include teachers' voices in shaping any kind of policy. Well, joining me to take your calls is Daryl Beauregard, who's president of the Prince George District Teachers Association. Hello, good afternoon.
Hi.
Thanks very much for being here. I note that you're in Vancouver today.
Yeah, I'm down here for some meetings with the BCTS, so it's actually a really good timing.
How much is this part of the conversation?
Not much, because today is really our governance meeting. It's kind of like our parliament, so we're deciding on the focuses that we're going to have as a union going forward. But there's a lot of us local leaders like myself who are here who are like, okay, what does this mean now? What are we going to do? So,
Yeah. What are we going to do? And so you come from the school district where there was a tragic case of a young boy, a 12-year-old boy, who encountered exploitation online. We heard very sadly from the parents with a heartbreaking plea on Friday for people to seek help for their kids and for kids to seek help if they encounter this, if they encounter exploitation online. And so the cell phone ban is one of the measures the province is bringing into place in order to address that. I imagine that hit you hard, and I'm sorry that this seems to be emotional.
yeah, no, absolutely. My heart really goes out to the family of Carson Cleland and his friends, his loved ones. This is an awful tragedy that sort of highlights the extreme dangers of technology when it can expose kids to vulnerability and exploitation. And I'm a father. I have 2 children in the public school system, of course. And this is a conversation around our own dinner table on, what does this mean? How are you feeling? Because so many people are affected by this story.
No parent hears
No,
that and doesn't
no,
feel
truly.
just heartbroken.
Thank you. Yeah, truly.
Yeah.
It is some of the worst things you can hear.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, he lost his life to suicide.
Absolutely.
You said you talked to your kids about this. For teachers, what is it like in a classroom trying to manage cell phone use?
Well, as your intro stated very, very accurately, our teachers are all over the place with this news because on one hand, this has been a distraction against learning for more than a decade. I've been a teacher for 20 years, and I think when it first became a real issue in my classrooms was about 15 years ago. So this is a long time coming. We've also had to learn and really respond to knowledge and recent studies that cell phone overuse and inappropriate use causes a lot of health harm. It causes anxiety, causes depression, it causes sleep issues. That teachers are supporting students in the classes. So I think when this first was talked about, it was talked about, well, it's just taken away from learning time. It's a distraction. And that really minimized and oversimplified the true dangers of this technology or really how it's being used. And then at the same time, we have teachers, myself included, when I was in the classroom, where we're using this technology to supplement resources. We're using this technology for learning.
Right.
We're using technology for organizing. I would take out, my phone and put something on my calendar. Hey, take your phones out, put that on your calendar, make a reminder, snap a photo of the whiteboard so that you can remember this. It's a tool, right? So I think there's that really nuanced balance between something that can make children very vulnerable, but at the same time, it can, used properly, it can be quite beneficial to the learning environment. And finding that balance is something we've struggled with for decades.
I can imagine. Yeah, you're absolutely right. My son uses a cell phone as well to watch, for example, lectures that his teacher very kindly puts together just to add as a learning resource.
Yeah.
So we've come to rely on it for learning. At the same time, it is a distraction to learning. And as you say, that's even a simplification because there are all these other mental health effects as well.
Absolutely.
Cell phone use. We do want to hear from our listeners on this as well, our audience. What are your thoughts on restricting cell phone use in the classroom? What should that look like? What should be restricted and what should be allowed? My guest is Daryl Beauregard, who is the president of the Prince George District Teachers Association, very kindly joining us here in Vancouver on our set. You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. An email from Michael says, the initiative by the government to stop use of cell phones in schools creates a positive chance for school administrators to include all the students in a discussion of digital literacy and use. Students will not obey bans or will find ways around bans if not included in that decision making. It would be great to include discussion of marketing, civic responsibility, personal space, and many other valuable topics that are relevant to society. Absolutely relevant, Michael. Thank you very much for that. Chris is joining us on the phone from Vancouver. Hi, Chris. Welcome.
Oh, hi. Thanks so much. My comment is really quick. I just think it's absolutely insane. I think the government has no place controlling that sort of thing in classrooms. That's up to the teacher. I think it treats kids with great disrespect. They need to learn these things, how to control themselves, whether it's, passing notes or chit-chatting or eating chocolate bars. I mean, honestly, this is not up to the government. I think it's absolutely insane. And
are you a teacher yourself, Chris?
No, I do a little bit of online teaching on occasion, but that's it. No, my mother was a teacher. My brother was a teacher. But I think kids need to learn these kinds of behaviors in the classroom, whether it's putting the cell phone away or not chit-chatting with one another, whatever it is to keep them focused. This is, what's next? What's next?
In terms of intervening in class.
Crazy. Yeah. This is the government doesn't have a place in that. That's part of the learning in a classroom. Put your cell phone away, please, or turn it off.
Yeah, it's part of the learning as well.
Use it properly, whatever you're going to do with it. But that's up to the teacher to control.
And do you think that this may help teachers, perhaps give some teeth to what teachers are trying to implement in class?
ensuring that the cell phones are put away?
Ensuring there's a policy.
Well, I mean, you know what? It could, but you know what? That's irrelevant. That's beside the point. I think, it begs the question, like I said, what's next? In terms of controlling things in the classroom.
Yeah, that seems to be part of the balance as well that the BC Teachers Federation is struggling with as they digest this this policy, incoming policy. Chris, thank you so much. Really good to hear from you.
Yeah, I would be very annoyed if I was a teacher, indeed. Thank you.
Good to hear from you in Vancouver, Chris. Yes, and are teachers feeling annoyed?
Well, I think there's a debate. I mean, this is announced policy. And when you put in a policy in place, you're really the beginning of the conversation. So I think it's a little bit premature for us to try to guess what this might look like in our schools. I mean, I will echo, I do think I would like to see staff in a school and parents and students all come together in a partnership. I don't think just sort of a blanket ban of anything is going to be that successful. We have bans on violence, we have bans on vaping, we have bans on all kinds of things in schools. We have difficulties enforcing that
How
already.
often do you see vaping in school?
High school teachers report that it's happening daily.
We have some emails as well that we received on Friday when we first touched on this. Jan wrote, banning or restricting cell phone use in schools will do little to reduce the harm in youth. What about the rest of the time when they're not in school? And Joanne writes from Victoria, all I can say is about time. We have been talking about this for 20 years. I clearly remember school work bullying that follows you home because kids were provided with cell phones. So two very different points of view there from our email. You can send us your thoughts as well, bctoday@cbc.ca. And something that Chris said there was it should be left up to teachers. And so when it comes to this, what kind of input should teachers have in coming up with this discussion? That was the part of the statement as well from the BCTF.
Well, I really think there needs to be a partnership of everyone. I mean, it's been up to teachers for 15, 20 years, and we're not able to enforce the rules we have in our classrooms effectively like that. I mean, I'm not saying I want to have sort of a hard and fast, full restricted use imposed on anyone, because I really think every rule that we're putting in place on someone, adults or students, you want to have that buy-in. You want to have that partnership. Right. And I think the success of restriction and any success of like preserving some of the good things about using that technology for an education tool while supporting students with things that are threatening, that requires a buy-in. That requires a partnership. And that's going to be a partnership between staff, students, parents, administrators, hopefully the board, all of the above, right? I think it's a conversation about what we want our classrooms to look like, what we want our schools to look like. And I think, one of the people that emailed in said, students are only in school part of the day, and that's very true. They're only in school for about 6 hours a day. We're not going to be able to solve all of the issues with inappropriate technology use in 6 hours when there's another 18 hours to go. So I think we really need that conversation, that partnership, so that we're all sort of establishing what does that environment really need to look like for all of us together.
Well, we definitely want to hear from our audience on that. What does that environment in the classroom need to look like when it comes to restricting cell phone use in schools? And what do you think should be allowed? What should be restricted? This as the BC government announces that it's going to work with school districts to come up with those policies restricting cell phone use in class coming September, so the next school year. And this is in light of disturbing cases when it comes to online exploitation of youth. And we're asking you, this is to try and prevent that as well. So we're asking you about your thoughts on that. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us to bctoday@cbc.ca. We're going to read an email from Sarah coming up in our next half hour. And in about 10 minutes from now, we're going to ask you about staying active and staying fit while staying on your budget. This, as we, of course, all worry about the rising cost of everything. But how are you keeping fit and active? We'll talk about that as well in about 10 minutes. Right now, it's 12:30. Time for the CBC News with Belle Puri.
Good afternoon. A fourth person has died after the helicopter crash north of Terrace last week. 35-year-old Lewis Ainsworth was president of the New Zealand Mountain Guides Association. 3 others, 2 men from Italy and the pilot, died in the crash as well. Another 3 people remain in hospital. The BC government will pause for 2 years enrolment of new international students as it boosts standards for private post-secondary institutions. The province says too many students are being exploited or taken advantage of when they come here for a good education. BC will now work to improve the quality of the students' experience by establishing new requirements for private colleges and universities. BC Transplant says 24 people in the province donated organs after medically assisted death between 2016 and 2022. The organization says it should be a normal part of end-of-life care. The Provincial Health Services Authority says a record-breaking 563 people received organ transplants in BC last year. A look at the BC weather along the north coast. Showers with the temperature steady at 10. In the Peace region, mainly sunny and a high of 12. The central interior, a chance of late afternoon showers, a high of 12. In the southeast, cloudy and 5. Southern interior, mainly cloudy and up to 8. And along the south coast, Greater Victoria, Metro Vancouver, it's going to be mainly cloudy with a high of 14 degrees. That's the CBC News from Vancouver.
We were talking about sugar, the sugar shortage last week. What about honey?
Honey, you know what? I have jars of honey from our bees on the roof of the CBC, which we haven't done for.
I miss that.
I do too. I love honey, but I don't use it very often.
I do love honey. I put it in yogurt. I spread it on toast.
Yes.
And did you hear about this Creston beekeeper who won big at the North American Honey Awards?
No.
Amazing. And a jar of creamed honey from this beekeeper cost as little as $15, sold for $877 at an auction. It's amazing. It's a really great story. This is Honeybee Zen Apiaries, creating a lot of buzz.
Okay, yes, I'd like to try it. Sounds pretty good.
Well, yes, and tomorrow, in fact, we're going to have Chef Ned Bell here on the show to go through some honey recipes. So maybe we'll learn some new ones.
How do you melt it when it gets all hard and crusty?
Oh, that's a good question. It's not a problem for me because it's still sweet. Yeah. But yes, that's a good question. Once it gets all hard, and I sometimes put it in the fridge as well, so then it gets a little bit hard. We're going to get all those questions answered, Belle.
All right. Yes, tomorrow.
Stay tuned tomorrow on TV as well, because we're on CBC television now.
And congratulations. Today's your first day.
Thank you very much. Multi-platform, living in the multiverse.
Well done. Break a leg.
I feel like a Marvel superhero. Thank you so much, Belle.
All right. Talk to you later.
That's the CBC's Belle Puri in the Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. This is BC Today, live on CBC Radio 1, live streaming as well on the CBC News app, on our website, cbc.ca/BC, on YouTube, and now on CBC Television. And we are back with Daryl Beauregard, who's president of the Prince George District Teachers Association. We're talking about BC's plan to restrict cell phone use in classrooms. That's an effort to protect young people from online harms. We've been taking your calls on this. What do you think it should look like? What should be allowed? What should be restricted? Should there be these restrictions? We heard from a caller earlier who said no. Call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733 on your cell phone, #690. You can also email us, bctoday@cbc.ca. Sarah wrote us an email. I have one concern. I have a child with ADHD who uses her phone in class daily as an educational aid. It is also in her individual education plan. I worry that if cell phones are banned, she would lose out. I agree that cell phones are a problem for some, but what about the children that use the phone for help? Thank you very much for that question and that concern, sharing your concern, Sarah. Let's go to our callers now who've been waiting on the line. Ariane is joining us from Deep Cove. Hi, Ariane. What do you think of restricting cell phone use in class?
Hi, I kind of agree with your previous caller about that it shouldn't be restricted. My kids are growing now. They're 27 and 24, and they kind of went through school during the time that cell phones got into their hands. And I remember a teacher back then saying, where else are they going to learn how to use these properly? And that teacher just said, my policy is they put them on their desk upside down on vibrate. They can check if something's coming in. They can make a decision if that's important. It's kind of how we all have.
Boy, does that sound reasonable.
I know, and I guess, of course, she probably had a discipline, take it away if they can't manage that until they can figure it out. But that way they're learning how we all should be using them. Like, I know I see my business meetings and people are all on their phones. I'm like,
right.
Oh, we should be having them upside down and only checking them when they beep.
I like that, actually.
Yeah. And then I think just like your other caller with, my family has ADHD as well. And it's, then if a child's then allowed to have their phone, does that single them out? And I just think it's going to make things really complicated. And our schools are the places we learn those things. And it's also sometimes a safe place for people if something does come up that is tricky on your phone. It might not be safe to bring it up at home, and you might have a better rapport with a teacher or something. So I just think, as tricky as it is, I think it'll be super hard. I think your guest has said that it's hard for the whole teachers to monitor and sort of police all the other restrictions like vaping and this and that. But to just add one more that, we all have phones, and that's a great place for kids to learn how to use a phone properly. So,
Ariane, thank you very much for that comment.
You're welcome, Michelle.
Great to hear
Thank
from
you.
you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye. Laura is up next in Powell River. Laura, you're a parent.
Yes, I have 11-year-old twins.
What's that
and
like for you?
I feel like all the parents that I know are struggling with screen time in general.
Sure.
And the phone is sort of the pinnacle of that. And I'm surprised it's even a question, but I do appreciate some of the feedback of the other callers. But I think that teachers need support for sure, and that would help us as parents as well. What I'd like to see is more communication and teaching how to communicate in the classroom. I feel like, my daughter doesn't even want to call her friend. She wants to text a friend.
Right.
And so I'd like to see more personal dynamics sort of taught, getting kids, talking to one another. I can't imagine that cell phones aren't anything but a distraction. Even if you have it face down and it's buzzing, you're immediately taken out of that moment, right?
So would you like to see restrictions for your twins' classrooms?
I would.
Yeah.
I would. I'd like that because I think it would give the teachers. I know teachers in our area who have said that they can't do it without the help because then they are looked at differently. And I think giving them support would then support us as parents, and maybe it would teach parents too how to put their phones away.
Yes, that would be useful too. Laura, really great to hear from you. Thank you so much.
Thanks for highlighting this topic. It's definitely important.
Yeah, it relates to everyone, parents too. Absolutely. Barb is our last caller on this in Kelowna. Hi, Barb.
Hi there. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
My thoughts on this are, I think that cell phones should be regulated in classes, especially for the younger age, say grades 1 to 8. I think there's a bit of I wouldn't say lack of discipline, but I have quite a few teacher friends that really struggle with classmates listening to what the teachers are asking of them. As an example, please put that phone down. No. And they do not put the phone down. So I think with, varying rules of this is when you can have it on, this is when you can't have it on. And for older people, I don't think this should apply for older students, for college or university students.
Yes, and we are talking about the K to 12 system at this point. Barb, thank you very much for your call as
You're
well.
welcome.
Hearing from lots of teacher friends there. Let's wrap up with Daryl Beauregard. Really interesting calls there. What would teachers like to see for you, personally as a teacher and a parent too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think being involved in a conversation, and this was a great conversation today, so that we are developing something that we feel will work, and we're not doing it to anybody. We're not doing it to teachers. We're not doing it to parents. We're not doing it to students. We're developing something together. I think that's really important. I really appreciate the person who brought up the part about the ADHD and the student uses a phone. I have a son. It's public knowledge. I have a son with diabetes, and he's had a phone connected to him for almost a decade. So this is something that's personal to me as well.
Yeah.
He's always been very open in public, but not every child needs to feel like they need to put their technology that they use for supports on display. So I think whatever rules we put in place, we got to make sure that the exception of those rules are reasonable for everyone, and then we're not actually causing a secondary harm to someone else that we hadn't anticipated. So I think taking the time to do this properly together in a partnership is key.
Lots of ongoing conversations.
Absolutely.
Sounds like would be useful. Great conversation. Great to have you for this conversation. Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Good to meet you. Daryl Beauregard is the president of the Prince George District Teachers Association. It's 12:42 now, 1:42 in the Mountain Time Zone. Well, we are nearing the end of January, and you may still be sticking to that New Year's resolution to stay active. If so, good for you. But what about the costs? Now, we're all watching our wallets closely these days. So we're asking you, is the expense holding you back from exercise? How are you staying active without breaking the bank? And what are some low-cost sports and activities you enjoy or have discovered? And we do have a giveaway, a BC Today water bottle for a lucky listener who's going to call us this afternoon as well. Perfect for staying hydrated while you work out. You can call us 1-800-825-5950. 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. You can email us to bctoday@cbc.ca. I have two guests for this conversation. Rubina Ahmed Haq is a CBC personal finance columnist who has looked into this topic, sports and costs. And JF Esculier is a physiotherapist with MoveMed Physiotherapy in Kelowna. Hello to both of you.
Hi.
Hi, Michelle.
Hello, good to speak with you. I promised myself last weekend was my cutoff for saying Happy New Year. So I'm just going to say hello and welcome. Rubina will talk about saving money while working up a sweat in a moment. But first, can you give us a sense of just how expensive fitness can be?
It can be really expensive. If you join a club that has, the steam rooms and the saunas and the concierge service and the smoothie bar, that has to come from somewhere. I mean, I know some gyms, especially in the bigger city centers, Vancouver being one of them, that can cost a couple of hundred a month. And for some people, that is a cost that they can't afford and it gets them into the gym. But if you multiply by 12, you're looking at, a few $1,000s going towards your fitness. And then on top of that, if you go to a club that is of that caliber, you might feel incentivized to buy special clothing, up-to-date trendy clothing, carry the latest bag. And so all those costs also factor in.
Yeah, a lot of pressure when you're there, perhaps. And I go to community centers, pretty reasonable. Go hiking, as long as you've got the hiking boots, which they're not cheap either, but trying to find those ways to participate in a class, feel that camaraderie and be pushed by an instructor while trying to save money. It is a cost though, and I have to budget for sure. How should people approach making room for what they would like to do in their budgets?
Fitness is, and for me at least, and I know for a lot of Canadians, is an essential. It's not something that I want to not have in my life. There's been times when I haven't had a lot of money, and so then I've done everything as much as I can for free. So going outside, doing body weight exercises at home, maybe hooking up with a friend that is sort of already on a really great fitness journey and getting some tips from them. And there's so much stuff online that you can access now for free. I noticed that during the pandemic, when everything was shut down, how much resources are available for free that
Right.
you can access. But like you mentioned there, Michelle, I do need a little bit of push to get to the gym, and so joining a class, making myself accountable, signing up for it, and then sort of having the instructor say, "You weren't there yesterday at 7 a.m., but you signed up." I need a little bit of that.
I
So
love that.
it comes down to choices. I mean, you can find gyms that are very reasonably priced where you're still going to get that person that's pushing you. You just have to find the right gym for you that's not going to break the bank.
Yes, and we're going to ask our audience as well to join in. Let us know, is expense kind of one of the hurdles keeping you away from participating in a sport or a fitness activity? Let us know if you found something that you enjoy that is also quite affordable. How do you stay active while staying on budget? You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone as well. If you'd like to email us, it's bctoday@cbc.ca. And to help you along, I do have this beautiful BC Today water bottle to help you stay hydrated. And it keeps your water nice and cool because look, it's steel. So you can give us a call and have a chance at a water bottle to take to your next workout. So there you go, some incentive for you there. JF Esculier is with us from Kelowna. And JF, you're a physiotherapist. And, we just heard Rubina say, it's a non-negotiable for me. I need to exercise. So tell us why it should be a priority, despite perhaps concerns around costs.
I mean, exercise has so many health benefits, right? It's obviously for physical health, but also for mental health. There's even studies that came out just recently saying that if you exercise regularly, you can have as many benefits as if you take medications for depression, right? So exercise is really, really powerful. And I definitely encourage people to maintain some sort of routine as much as they can in their daily life. And you can do it for free. So running is definitely the easiest
There
way
you
to
go.
do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you knew it would be coming. We've had this discussion before, Michelle. But
Yes.
I mean, even if you don't run, you can walk outside, and then you can do a little bit of jogging here and there during your walks. You can build up and still get the health benefits from physical activity at almost no cost, right? So it's very accessible, very cheap, and regardless of the size of your wallet.
Yes, and you can just really head out the door. There's the transit time as well. But running shoes can be pricey as well. What are some things that people can think about or look for to make sure they're getting bang for their buck?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a great question. Obviously, if you go into a running store, you'll get shoes from anywhere from $120 all the way to now $350. But those are not necessary. There are a lot of technologies that are marketed that are not really necessary for most people. So usually, when I just tell people, just get a pair of shoes that you walk with, usually that you're comfortable with, and just go outside and just start adding, a minute of jogging in them and gradually building up. But if those shoes are comfortable for you, you don't need anything fancy. You don't need a lot of all those technologies. You can just go and gradually build up, and most people will be just fine with that.
Don't fall for the marketing or the pressure like Rubina was talking about. You go to a fancy gym and suddenly you want all the fancy workout clothes. So Rubina, we heard about running. It's almost free. What are some good affordable options that you found?
So community centers have very affordable fitness classes. You can buy monthly passes depending on which town or city that you live in. That is a very, very economical way to work out in a group if that's something that you like, which I like. I like working out in a group. It just helps me, like I said, stay accountable. You can access lots and lots of information online if you are that disciplined to do that workout at home. Going back to the pandemic, there are so many examples of people who got into into shape because they were at home and they thought, okay, let's use this time for something good. Let's use it to get more fit, to get better at whatever sport that I want to do after the pandemic's
Right.
over. And they had to do that from their own home, and so they had very little access to professional buildings. And even buying equipment, you can buy it secondhand. We bought recently an elliptical secondhand, and it was about a quarter of the price, and it's basically brand new. It did not, it wasn't really difficult to find either. That's the other thing. I would say February and March, when some people have given up their New Year's resolutions, which is unfortunate, but some people who are still on that journey can take advantage of that by buying some of that equipment. So definitely don't go and buy everything brand new. That's going to cost you way too much, and you can get it much cheaper.
What a great idea. You got an elliptical second hand. Really great idea.
Yes.
Looking at second
I'll tell
hand
you,
as
it was
well.
less than $200, Michelle. Less than $200.
There you go. And you're using it. If
Yes,
you're-
yeah.
then there you go. Also, I heard pickleball is popular. I don't know. I know some of our audience is definitely into pickleball as well. You can give us a call and let us know about that. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733, pound 690 on your cell phone. And Doug is calling us from Nanaimo. Hello, Doug.
Hello. Yeah, no, I just listening to you. About 7 years ago, I started to get together with a buddy and did some morning hikes. We started early in the morning, say around 6:30, and would go up for an hour and a half up a trail and up a good climb, and got the blood pressure and the heart rate up, and basically got my 20 minutes of sweat sheen in. So that,
I like that, the sweat sheen.
yeah, well, that's for maintenance. And then after that, it was a matter of just coming down. And along the way, we were out in the forest, and we have some getting all of that good oxygen and
Sounds lovely.
laughing and talking along the way. It was good for the mind, too.
That is so fantastic. I love being out in the forest. And so you did this every morning?
It's either 5 to 6 days a week.
Yeah.
Might take a day rest, but by the time you get home, if you're starting, especially in the summer, if it's early enough, you've got the whole morning still left to you.
That's
so it's
right.
all good.
And do you go on different trails or the same one?
Generally the same one, but we've stretched out into some different trails. We have easy access to a lot of trails just out of town here in Nanaimo.
Absolutely. Oh, that is so great, Doug. I'm happy to hear that. Thanks so much for the call.
Cheers. Bye.
Bye-bye. That's Doug in Nanaimo. Roy is up next in Port Hardy. Hi there, Roy.
Hi.
Hi. And how have you found staying active while also keeping things cheap?
Well, I'm 83 years old. About 10 years ago, I started getting a little concerned about not being in shape. So I picked up a couple of 15-pound weights, and I picked up some elastics from the Canadian Tire store, and I started doing push-ups at home.
Wow.
And I work out 3 or 4 days a week, well, maybe 5 or 6 days a week. But I've gotten my push-up regime up to, like I'm doing 60 push-ups now.
Wow.
I know it's quite amazing. I've had a couple of hip replacements, and I can't walk very far. My wind isn't all that good because I was a heavy cigarette smoker when I was young, but I'm still keeping myself active, and I don't have to spend any money on going to. I've never been to a place where people go to work out. I don't understand that at all. I am old school too. I don't have a cell phone either. I don't believe in that crap either. So I just come from a different time. But
look at you, 83. So you only started exercising with weights 10 years ago at 73?
I got to be about 76 years old, and I was sort of giving up on life a little bit, and I let myself go. And I've got 11 grandchildren, and they sort of brought me back to life again.
Oh.
So I just started working out again. And quite frankly, I started out doing 10, 15 push-ups, and one day I was doing 40, and one day I was doing 50. And I wished I'd had a cell phone just so I could take a picture for my grandchildren to see me do it.
You should let them watch you sometime.
Yeah, no, I don't think anybody's ever had a chance to watch me, so I could be lying to you, but I'm not.
I doubt you are. And
No,
what a testament, right? To
well,
start.
it's self-reliance.
Yeah.
People can take care of themselves. We don't. That cell phone culture has really spoiled people a lot. It's really taken a lot away from people.
You've brought it back full circle to our previous topic, and yes, cell phone use, being online, contributing to being sedentary as well. Roy, congratulations to you.
Yeah.
You're an example. Thank
Okay,
you.
my dear.
You take care.
too.
That's Roy in Port Hardy. I can see JF Esculier in Kelowna smiling as he's listening to Roy there. Look at that. Starting at 83, thinking, I think I should get into this, and picking up some weights.
Yeah, I want to congratulate Roy and other people like him because that's amazing. If you look at the recommendations for physical activity, a combination of some sort of weight training, it doesn't have to be anything heavy, but just pushing or pulling on stuff to maintain your muscle mass, maintain your bone density, and then combining that with just some light aerobic exercise, whether it's walking, hiking, or light jogging. That's pretty much the recommendations that we have for healthy aging.
Yeah.
So ideally a combination, and like Roy said, you don't need anything fancy, and you can do that just at home or with friends and organize some sort of
Love
sessions
it.
3 times a week, like Doug was saying, hiking. So that's great. Congratulations to both of these
Just
people.
great examples. And Rubina, I have about 40 seconds left, but we're talking about finances. So what kind of cost would be reasonable, let's say, for a monthly cost for exercise?
I mean, my gym costs me about $100 a month. I think that is reasonable considering all the other things that we spend money on. It really comes down to choices. I mean, if you're going to go out for a night out with friends and have a dinner, most likely it's going to cost you about $100. So can you then swap that cost out for the gym if that is something that you need? And if you want to do it for free, like so many callers have told us, you can join, free Facebook groups, fitness groups that will encourage you. You can meet them. They'll give you tips on what to do. Hiking across Canada is available. I think that is one activity that most Canadians can take advantage of, and it is absolutely free unless there's a small cost to get into a provincial park or something.
Right.
But that's my recommendation is that, less than $100, I think is pretty reasonable.
There you go. We love to hear it. Rubina and JF, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
Rubina Ahmed Haq is a CBC personal finance columnist, and JF Esculier is a physiotherapist in Kelowna. Mary writes, I put on my exercise clothes out at night, and I see it in the morning. Even if I don't feel like it, the clothes win me over. Thanks for all your calls. That is it for our show today. Thank you so much for calling in and joining the discussion. You can always email us bctoday@cbc.ca. And do join us tomorrow on the show. We will have Chef Ned Bell here in studio to talk about your favorite honey recipes. That sounds sweet. I'm Michelle Eliot. Have a great afternoon. Thanks for joining us.